Top of the morning to you. I've just spent the last, I'd say, 40 minutes, great fun, trying to figure out this new piece of shit software that I bought in order to do kind of screen recordings. I won't be using that because I can't figure this shit out, because I wanted to do a review of Darker. So I'm going to do a review of Darker, I should say, but I wanted to do it with me flipping through the book, so I don't think that's going to be possible now. So what I will do is later on I'll try and put in some screenshots of what I'm jabbering about. So welcome to this rambling, probably long-winded review of the Red Room's role-playing game of pure terror and horror, Darker. I think this is probably going to be one of my hardest reviews, because how do you review a book that pretty much encompasses so much in 490 pages? So this book is a whopper. And, you know, how do I do it justice? The truth is I can't really. There's no way I'm going to be able to tell you all the details and give you every minutiae that is happening in the background of this tome. So I'm just going to give you as much as I can, and hopefully if you like the sound of it, you'll check it out. Spoiler alert, I only review stuff that I really like. So, you know, I really, really, really like this role-playing game. On the surface, I love the art. The art is very cool. I really like the cover. Very evocative. Yes, there are some AI illustrations in here, but they're used to very good effect. And I've talked about the use of AI for small publishers before, so I'm totally pro AI for small publishers. Jeremy Hart's art, he does some great stuff in here. So to be fair, they paid an artist as well. So there's a hybrid model in here, so I don't think anyone should be too upset. But what they do with AI art is very cool. And I will try and show you a few bits, as well as Jeremy Hart's art as well. You can see Jeremy's art on the cover. The writing itself is very good, evocative, and it conveys the game's horror concepts really well. So what is Darker? Pretty much what it says on the tin. A contemporary horror game aimed at mature audiences. And like my own game, I would say, you know, that's understating it. This is not a game for people who can't handle their shit. So bear that in mind. I think you should view the kind of horror and tone at the same level as, say, Cult. It deals in some pretty gnarly subjects, and I think some of it is not suitable for the modern audience, who basically have been lulled into thinking that RPGs are all about the fuzzies, even such an expansive genre as horror. I mean, horror should always challenge you and keep you on edge, and this game does that, and it does it well. The setting is bleak. And once the players get involved with the shenanigans that are going behind the scenes, then they're in for a tough journey. And one that they probably won't win in the end. Now, I'm not going to say that this setting is hopeless, of course, but I am saying that you will feel lonely. Well, the players will feel lonely, isolated, and won't have many places to turn to for help, even if they're based in some kind of government agency or whatever. And that's for reasons that I'll go into a bit later. The overall game, of course, deals with the occult and supernatural, but there are plenty of enemies within the human state of affairs. That is to say, there are not many people you can trust, as the agents of dark forces are pretty much everywhere, and they are expert infiltrators and have been weaving their way in for a long time. And things are only getting worse as humanity's apathy is growing and allowing the forces of evil to claw ever closer. So as we progress forward in time, things are only getting worse for us. The mechanics are pretty easy to run. They're probably a little bit crunchier than a regular OSR game. That is to say that they go into a little bit more detail, you know, for weapons, car chases, damage, etc. In fact, I wouldn't consider this an OSR game per se, but I would say that the mechanics are OSR adjacent. So if you're familiar with that style, then you should feel right at home. I mean, it should literally be pick up and play. But having the extra crunch is not necessarily a bad thing, because it gives you more options, you know, for tactics, etc. And I like that. I mean, it goes into details about madness in a few different ways. In some ways, it should also feel familiar, because you'll pick up an archetype and you'll start running from there, pretty much like you would in Call of Cthulhu. You pick a profession or whatnot. But I've got to give Miguel some points here for going the extra mile. So there's over 40 archetypes to choose from archaeologist to war veteran. Probably the most I've seen in a contemporary horror game, in one book anyway. I can't think off the top of my head of any other game that offers more. So, how cool is that? Players also have skills in an OSR game they may not have, but they do here, and they range from novice to master. I like the way the Red Room here have done experience. Yes, you can increase your attributes and your skills, but you have to have a reason to do so. You don't suddenly magically become Arnold Schwarzenegger without pumping weights, etc., or you learn a specific magical ritual by osmosis. No, you have to put the time in, and you'll have to find someone that can teach you. So that just feels nice and organic to me. There are no levels per se your character can build up. Another kind of interesting concept that I haven't seen before is that all characters are assumed to have basic skills, which I thought was a nice touch. So you all have access to like jumping, listening, anything that is common sense that you would have. You don't have to have a skill in that per se. And these basic skills can then be augmented with another skill to make them better, such as like adding athletics, etc., which will override your basic jumping skill or whatnot. You can also further customize your character with perks and drawbacks. And again, there's a huge list to choose from. So you won't feel shortchanged there at all. So I should also mention one thing that you don't really see in any other game is Red Room's own in-house alignment system, if I can use that term. In Darker, again, you're not playing big-jawed heroes who are happy-go-lucky fellows. They all have some kind of touch of darkness in them. Basically, you're playing anti-heroes, or at least flawed characters. And one thing that I really like is their sins and virtues system. And basically, you can combine sins and virtues to create a kind of a custom alignment system. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's actually very well implemented and simple once you kind of read the rules on it. But you can kind of tailor your character, and the GM can tailor the game to get the tone that everyone wants. So you could play dark heroes with a path to redemption, or you can play not so nice heroes who are prone to giving in to their vices. And there's a list of the 7 deadly sins, and you have the 7 virtues as well. And as I said, depending on the game, you can pick and choose depending on the tone and the type of character you want to portray. So it's quite cool. There's a lot of depth in there, which I really like. But in Darker, there's also another way to play, and that is the path of taint and virtue. This is an optional kind of system. So if you're seeking an even more narrative approach to the character's development, you can choose this alternative alignment system. Your actions will take you either into a kind of a positive score or a negative score. Positive score obviously represents that the character is on a trajectory towards righteousness, whereas negative scores indicates a descent into corruption. Although one quite cool thing is, even if you do go, say, thoroughly corrupt, or you end up in the thrall of a supernatural being, you can still play the character, which I like. And you could even try and redeem them. Unlike Call of Cthulhu, once your sanity is gone, you're fucked. That's it. Character's handed over. You have virtue points and taint points. These are accrued, as I've kind of intimated, by doing good or bad things. But it's innovative, and I think it's a great way. I prefer that type of alignment guideline, the sins and virtues and these paths, to some of the other games that use them. I think these actually have a good benefit towards the overall tone of the game. Combat is kind of what you'd expect from a D20 game or adjacent game, but it does have some extra parts. You've got hit locations, critical hit tables for various weapons, vehicles, chases, etc., and vehicle combat. You also have fear and panic, which is a little bit more interesting than just sanity. You have fear points, and if you fail a wits check, you accrue points. Fear points. If you go over your panic threshold, you have to roll on the panic table, and there's various effects. If you get some kind of derangement or whatever, you can manage these by various common sense approaches, such as like talking to a friend, getting therapy, etc., etc. Darker, in some ways, is a bit reminiscent to Delta Green in the fact that you can play various factions. And there's quite a few to choose from. Some are pretty much government agencies that you'd expect anything from, I don't know, the CIA, Mossad, any of these kind of based on real government agencies. And there's also some more esoteric. Some of them are very cool. But I don't really want to go into some of the more esoteric parts of the game because I don't really want to spoil it for anyone. If anyone's going to play this and I start giving away too many things, I don't want to do that. One of my first impressions of the game is, beyond the fact that I really like it and think it's probably one of the finest contemporary horror games I've ever read. Actually, I haven't played it yet, obviously, but I think it's fantastic. But my first impression is that it's extremely complete. This book, Darker, is probably everything you would ever need. That's it. One book, over 490 pages, bada bing, that's it. And you've got to really admire that. Now, I'm not sure if more is going to come out for it. I'd say there probably will. I mean, I hope they do, but they certainly wouldn't need to. I'm just being greedy. I just want more stuff. But literally, this is a done and dusted, buy one book, and that's it. And also the price. I mean, I think, I can't remember what I paid. Is it €14? €13? If you tried to buy Delta Green or the latest Call of Cthulhu or some such, I don't know, what is it, €27, 20, whatever, it's over 22 bucks or euro or whatever. So this is an amazing deal, in my opinion. I mean, there's so much more I could talk about as well. As far as threats go, you have got a wide range here. So you could literally do your own thing and play kind of agents or investigators against cryptids, Men in Black type of stuff. No problem at all. You want your agents to chase a local Bigfoot who's been hacking people to death or whatever, no problem. And you'll get loads of stats from mundane cryptids, etc. here. But taking a step beyond that is where you get into the real meat of the setting. Again, I'm not going to go in too much detail because I think that's something that players should find out for themselves. And I would say that there's a large variety, and it goes into beyond, say, the average cryptid or vampire, zombie, or whatever. You start getting into the more supernatural beings, and they work in the world of Darker itself, and they are kind of running the machinations behind the game. And these creatures who are exceedingly powerful. Some are gods, some are kind of archdemons, some are from a netherworld. Each one has its own flavor and each one operates in a different way, but they're all at the same time linked together. And that makes, I think, the world work really well behind the scenes. I also like the fact, and I think that Miguel has really worked in a lot of current events into the horror setting itself. And these are some concepts that are really sinister. You've got hideous cults. There's lots of individuals, kingmakers behind the scenes, if you will, who are pretending to do great work, but are really trying to subvert the human race, etc. So a lot of the things we see today in our society, Miguel has kind of used as fuel for the horror, which I find very interesting. I always like that, some kind of analog to our own world. This won't please some people. Some of the modern audience would take it too seriously, I think. So I applaud Miguel for doing it, but I think, there'd be a few sensitive types that wouldn't see the satire or would say, oh, you can't do that for horror setting, it's bold. There is another kind of dimension as well called the Netherworld, which is interesting, where certain other entities come from, primordial kind of chaos. So really, to sum up Darker, so for me, Darker is one of the best horror games I've seen in decades. I don't say that lightly. And I keep promising to write a contemporary horror game. And if I ever do, I would say that Darker would have a big influence over me. I think if you like games like Cult, Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, Conspiracy X, if you like those type of games and those type of play options, but you also like OSR stuff or OSR adjacent games, I think you will really like this game. It also is its own thing, its own cosmology as well. So you're not just seeing some kind of regurgitated game of boring ass cryptids that we've seen a million times. This is original while it does have some basis, perhaps, from some ancient civilizations, it takes those concepts and goes far beyond and makes it its own original setting. If you like those type of games, that type of horror, and you want your horror pretty hard hitting, where the players, sure, they might have some tactical victories along the way or may even slow down the encroaching chaos, well, I think this game is a must-have for your collection. And if you are into magic and magical rituals for your games, the players have a wide range of magical rituals available to them. One other thing I should mention before I wrap this up, there is an excellent set of appendixes and they're very comprehensive. They go into adventure generators, playing non-human characters like werewolves, vampires, or something else, etc., with their supernatural drawbacks and powers that they would have. They also have a comprehensive rule summary of all the major points of the game, like character creation, etc., which I find very handy, and I wish more people would do that. So the appendixes themselves are excellent and worth the price of admission, in my opinion. That's it. Sorry it was a bit rambling. Anyway, I think you should really check it out. Let me know if you do. Until next time.